Jesus said, "I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." One morning, not long ago, although it certainly feels like it happened a long time ago because of all the changes that have happened since mid-March in response to the COVID-19 pandemic, I was sitting at a table in our coffee shop, Crossroads Cafe, enjoying a delicious cup of coffee, when a gentleman walked in, ordered an Americano, and looked over at a sign on the side of the counter that explains Crossroads Cafe is a ministry of Church of the Good Shepherd. He took a while to read the sign, then asked the manager a question. It was a question that caught my attention. It was a question I was surprised to hear because I assumed it was a question that did not need to be asked. And it turns out my assumption was wrong. Even our wonderful, incredibly intelligent manager of Crossroads Cafe could not answer this question. And that made me realize that it is a very good question for today, Good Shepherd Sunday, the fourth Sunday in the season of Easter. And the question the gentleman asked, the question of the day, was, who is the Good Shepherd? For those of us who already know the answer of the question, perhaps we need to remember that there are quite a few people who do not know, who have not read the Bible, and if they have, may not understand the biblical language or the references made in the Bible. And we need to be careful about our assumptions about our neighbors and the neighborhood, even in assuming that everybody who passes by our sign knows what the name of our parish means. I ended up answering the gentleman's question, and he certainly came across as a well-read and intelligent person. And I answered him that the Good Shepherd is how Jesus described himself in the Gospels. In fact, the sentence immediately following the one I began this sermon with is Jesus saying, "I am the Good Shepherd." I also explained the reason Jesus used that term to describe himself is because Good Shepherd imagery has deep scriptural roots and features prominently throughout the Old Testament. It was a way of speaking about the preferred relationship between a leader and their people, one characterized by showing care for people like a good shepherd takes care of their sheep. It was the job of many of Israelites' most beloved biblical leaders, including Moses and King David. And it is the theme of one of the most well-loved Psalms in the Bible, Psalm 23, that begins, "The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want," and goes on to describe a relationship with God that is life-giving and trusting. In calling himself the Good Shepherd, Jesus is calling on that scriptural imagery of the ideal relationship of a leader and their people, one that is life-giving, one that is worthy of trust. And like in Psalm 23, it is the image Jesus wanted people to associate with their relationship with God. And by calling himself the Good Shepherd, Jesus is saying he is the true leader or king or Messiah because his relationship with God and God's people is one of life-giving and redeeming love. By calling our parish Church of the Good Shepherd, we are saying who we are, followers of Jesus. And when we are at our best, we embody that life-giving, redeeming love of God in Christ through our worship and our ministries. Today, on the Sunday that shares our name, we are reminded of this because all the scripture passages assigned for today make reference to the shepherd imagery in the Old and the New Testaments. Even today's gospel reading, where Jesus referred to himself as the gate for the sheep to move through to access those good green pasture lands. Jesus, in today's gospel, also mentioned thieves and strangers who do not know the sheep, don't value them, and see them only as a means to an end. While scholars and commentators are not sure if Jesus was referring to any specific person or group of people, it is perhaps not too hard for us to relate or imagine what Jesus was talking about. Perhaps there are times when we have felt taken advantage of or have taken advantage of someone. Perhaps we can relate to feeling like being treated like a number instead of a person, valued for what or how much of something we produce instead of who we are. Or maybe we're the ones guilty of forgetting when looking at numbers that those numbers actually represent individual human beings with hopes, dreams, broken hearts, fears, families, ideas. Jesus knew that there are many people who use their voices to try to convince others to follow them, only to profit from them. You know, those people who want to sell us something or who want our information for their own benefit. And I don't know about you, but since this pandemic began, I have been bombarded with emails from companies and consultants that I've never heard of, trying very hard to convince me and scare me into believing that if I don't buy what they are selling, the church is going to die. Even my social media feeds are full of colleagues and consultants telling me that if I don't do what they are doing, I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose attendance, I'm going to lose membership, and I'm going to lose funds. I've seen a lot of competition out there to win this pandemic, to be the best videographer, the best asker for money, the best snatcher of sheep from other flocks. That's the unique opportunity of this pandemic, those voices all tell me, and they assure me I don't want to miss out on my chance to grab as much as I can. But those voices sound like the ones Jesus cautioned against in today's gospel. The voices that sound fearful and anxious. They're preaching a gospel of scarcity, where there never was enough people or money for all the churches in the world. And that makes this a good opportunity to cull the herd, as it were. They certainly don't match the words of Jesus, who said that he came that we might have life and have it abundantly. Practices like consumerism can misinterpret the words of Jesus to mean that he came that we might have a life of a lot of money and a lot of stuff. But abundance doesn't mean a lot. As those who felt it necessary during this COVID-19 pandemic to hoard important essentials like toilet paper, hand sanitizer, soap, or food might be discovering as time goes on, and all that stuff doesn't really calm their fears or make them feel less anxious. Taking more than your fair share in order to prevent others from having those essential things, especially if you plan to profit from that later on, won't bring anyone peace, because that is not what abundant life is. One of the best examples that I can give to help us better understand what Jesus is talking about when he said he came to give us life in abundance is the TARDIS from Doctor Who, that BBC science fiction television show about an alien called the Doctor who travels through space and time. And for those unfamiliar with the show, the TARDIS is the Doctor's ship that travels anywhere through space and time. Now, the TARDIS is supposed to blend into its surroundings, but the Doctor's ship has a broken circuit, so it always looks like a blue police box from Great Britain. And as fans of Doctor Who know very, very well, what looks like a small blue box on the outside is much, much bigger on the inside. And until recently, that characteristic of the TARDIS was explained away as Time Lord technology. But an episode of Doctor Who written by Neil Gaiman called The Doctor's Wife gave it a deeper, more theological meaning. When the TARDIS matrix was forcibly removed from the iconic blue box and put into a woman, the TARDIS, who is sentient, was able to learn about humanity from the inside out. At one point in the episode, the TARDIS asked the Doctor, "Are all people like this?" "Like what?" the Doctor replied, and the TARDIS asked another powerful question, so much bigger on the inside. It took the TARDIS almost the whole episode to find the right word to clarify her question. It was a word she described as big, complicated, and sad, and the word was alive. Being bigger on the inside wasn't about the many rooms the TARDIS has or the stuff inside those rooms. Being bigger on the inside is being alive. And being alive is more than respirating, reproducing, and consuming. That's called survival, and even the COVID-19 virus can do that. But being bigger on the inside is another way of saying perhaps being made in God's image. It's the ability to create art and music, stories and songs, mathematics, languages. Being alive is also creating, cultivating, and nurturing relationships. It's giving love and receiving love. It's caring about something larger than yourself. It's being vulnerable and curious, learning, growing, maturing, discovering, and sharing discoveries. It's delighting in beauty. It's feeling joy in connection to the world, other people, and God. Being alive also means suffering at times, and our faith helps us trust that suffering can help us learn to become more compassionate, sympathetic, empathetic, and even merciful. Being alive also is about sacrificing for something larger than ourselves, like our graduating class of 2020 has had to sacrifice their graduation ceremonies and parties for the well-being of others. Being alive is experiencing and grieving loss. It's letting your heart be broken and then rising again to heal so that you can love again. That's how God can redeem losses. And that's what Jesus was talking about when he said he came so that we might have life and have it abundantly. He freed us from fear of death so that we can engage in the wondrous, complex, joyful, sad, redeemable mystery that is life. And because our parish's name is Church of the Good Shepherd, today is usually a day when we celebrate our ministries as well as our namesake, which means it's particularly painful not to be together in person today. I'm certainly feeling that pain. Yet, even though we are apart, we can still celebrate that we are a part of Church of the Good Shepherd. And since it's a different kind of time, maybe our celebration needs to look differently, perhaps by reflecting on the observation I made not that long ago, that like assuming the TARDIS is small because of its outward appearance, we have to be careful not to assume everybody knows who the Good Shepherd is when they see the sign outside of our parish. And we can wonder how we can show them who the Good Shepherd is. And that's really hard right now, I know, because we can't open Crossroads Cafe or serve Wednesday free lunch or even gather together for worship. But this doesn't mean we stop listening for the voice of abundant life calling to us, even in the midst of the cacophony of noise around us that speaks of fear, anxiety, and scarcity. You know, those voices that try to convince us the future is going to look just like right now. We can tell those voices to keep it down. We know the future can be better. And one way to get there is to live the life Jesus came to bring us by continuing to check in on each other, to keep giving as much as we can. That is really appreciated. And we can share what we have instead of competing against others and support each other individually and as parishes as best we can. And of course, pray for everyone, our country and the whole church. And we can try to learn what we can from this time and let what we learn influence how we will continue to follow our Good Shepherd, who guides us even in this pandemic through right pathways for his name's sake, trusting he will see us through and that the world will see the Good Shepherd through us. Amen.